Welcome to the talk Music and Spirituality, or Music for Meditation. Right in the beginning, I wish to tell you I am not a professional musician. In fact, I've never learned an instrument, though I play quite a few instruments. I never had a teacher. My brothers and sisters, they had teachers, but they all stopped making music. I never had a teacher, but I never stopped. Music is very important to my life, as it is to many lives. Anyway, concerning spirituality, I'm quite professional. I do meditate almost 40 years, and I take it very seriously. So in this respect, I do have a little competence. Now, I started as a young boy making blues music. I had a blues band, and I was always making music, always going to concerts, jazz festivals. I also loved classical music. And then finally, once I went to a spiritual concert. It was said a peace concert by a spiritual master. And that was really interesting to me. I was used to professional musicians, of course, and this spiritual concert took place in a big hall. Quite a few thousand people did fit into this hall. But the master who performed there, he was like a child. Extremely simple music, only melodies, simple melodies. And he made quite a few mistakes. So for my mind, that was quite mind-blowing. It was amazing. It was, what is that? Was my first reaction. I had problems to digest the music. Once he took an instrument, he could hardly bring out a note of this instrument. I thought, what is that? But in one occasion, he tried to adjust the microphone, put it closer to his mouth. He was singing and accompanied by his harmonium in a very simple way, no harmonies. And he could not find the microphone. He was missing it when he tried to get it. First I thought, what is that? Is he drunk? But of course, a spiritual master is not drunk. He doesn't take drugs, though he is intoxicated, but not with poison, not with drugs, but with God. God intoxicated. And that was something very, very special. I've never experienced something like that. That was fascinating to me. So I stayed until the end of the concert. And then something interesting happened. After the concert, I realized that this music, so simple and with all the mistakes and all that, had made a profound impression on my consciousness. I felt light, like a bird flying. I felt peace. So the pressure of the day-to-day life had left me. And also I felt a kind of happiness, which I could not account for any reason for it. So I understood that even if for the mind it is a little bit strange, the spiritual music, unusual, let us put it like that, for the heart and for the whole being, it is very, very special, very valuable. Now, what is spiritual music? So as I mentioned already, it is not the regular music for the vital, for the emotional being inside us, not for the mind or any other plane of our being, but for the heart. And it needs to be soulful. That is, soulfulness is something which we usually don't get in the music, in the regular popular music. It is a strange thing for most of the people. And also I had to learn what is meant by soulful music. Later on, when I joined a spiritual group, once I was performing a spiritual song, which was at that time freshly composed by a spiritual teacher. And the name of the song was Smile, My Soul, Smile. So we performed it. And in the middle of the song, the master stopped us. He said, "What is that? Are you going to perform at the funeral? There is no soul in your singing. It is a barren desert." And we could not finish the song. It was quite shocking to me. Later on, when I had my own ensemble, spiritual group, we again performed for the spiritual master. And again, the same thing happened. In the middle of our performance, he stopped us, which is quite tough for the musicians. Hundreds and hundreds of people were listening and were witnessing our deplorable fate. The master said, "My ears are very pleased, and you have very accomplished musicians in your group. But my heart doesn't feel anything. Spiritual music is to melt your heart, to give you inner feelings, feelings of devotion, of aspiration. It must touch you inwardly, elevate your consciousness. But I don't feel any elevation of my consciousness while your performance, though the musicians were good, though the music was well performed." And then he mentioned another group. He said they have no good musicians. But when they sang this very same song, something was stirring up my heart, something was pleasing me inwardly enormously, and I was very pleased with that group. So you see, spiritual music depends a lot on the inner attitude, on the devotion, the surrender, the love for a higher cause. You can't just perform it mechanically, perfectly. That is nothing. You have to convey inner feelings. Okay. Now, so not for the throat. Nice music sung with a beautiful throat, but sung with a beautiful heart. I remember an incident. I was with a spiritual master in Japan, and we were in a nice hotel. And he was sitting in the lobby of the hotel and was composing songs. And in the Indian traditional way, he sang the new composed songs, and his disciples just learned it by heart while listening to the song. And then something very funny happened. Can you imagine? One of the guests of the hotel went to the management of the hotel and he complained. He said, "I'm sitting in the lobby and I can't enjoy my alcoholic drinks because they always sing their devotional songs." So, you see, this music has even an impact to people who are not spiritual. I would say a positive impact, though this guest has seen it in a different way. He could not enjoy it. I want to mention a few basic things about music. Everything, all life is wave, vibration, a swinging. Let us start with the sight. You see me now. You can only see me because I'm emanating waves, light waves. And the short waves, the frequency which are short, have a different color than the long waves. If you let go the white light through a prism, you can separate all the colors of the light. Without waves, without this vibration, the swinging, there you can't see anything. Because one thing will be here and one thing will be there, and there is nothing in between. It must be a connection. So all you're seeing is connected with waves. And again, the material world, everything solid is actually nothing else than energy, than vibration, swinging, waves. The more we enter into the material objects, the more we see everything is made from atoms. And let us look on one atom. If you take one atom, let us say this has the size of a football place, a football field. Then the nucleus, which is the biggest material thing of the atom, 99% of the atom material, is as big as a golf ball. And the electrons, which are all on the move, they are extremely small and always swinging, always on the move. So actually an atom is nothing else than energy. There is no substance, almost no substance. And again, now we come to music, we come to hearing. Of course, there is no hearing without waves, vibration, swinging. It is the same. And here again, long frequencies are deep notes. Small frequencies are high notes, and everything is vibrating. So we have material world, the world of seeing, the world of acoustics. But even if we look on a bigger scale, the planets, we have the sun and the planets and the stars are moving around. And even the galaxies are moving around. Everything is swinging in this cosmos. And if we come back to our planet, also here is a rhythmic change. We have day and night. We have the seasons. We have the moon. Everything in our own being. The heart being is a constant rhythm. The breathing. So no wonder that music, the waves of the music, the rhythm has a strong impact on our consciousness. After all, what are we? We are consciousness. Otherwise, we would not know that we are. We would not be able to communicate with anybody, would not be able to think. We are consciousness. And in the spiritual world, consciousness is considered like water. It is actually neutral. But if you put a drop of poison into water, then it becomes poison. If you put some sugar inside, then it becomes sweetness. So consciousness as such is neutral. And now we have something, we have consciousness, and there is something taking place, like, I don't know the exact English word, maybe feedback or resonance or response phenomenon. If music comes, something in us resonates. It is like you have the guitar, two strings, and if you strike the lower string on the same note as the higher string, then the higher string, without striking, is starting to vibrate. That is the response feedback which is happening, and the same can be seen in us. We hear, for instance, sad music, and something in us responds to it. We feel vital music, aggressive music. Then again, a part of our inner being is responding to that. And of course, if we hear the music of the soul or soulful, heart music, again, something is responding and changing our consciousness. So music has a very strong impact to our consciousness. And this is used for various reasons, of course. In wartime, they used to strike the drum when they attacked the soldiers, drum and the conches to give the soldiers courage. And again, there are songs full of sweetness and love songs, and other songs, they stimulate you to dance in the disco. So you see, music can influence our feelings in a very effective way. And let us have a short look to our being. Of course, we have our physical being. And inside the physical, we have the emotional being. There are different, you can say, call it centers in the navel, even in the heart. Again, we have our mind. There is a kind of music also which pleases the mind very much. And we have our psychic being. It is here where we say I. It is in the heart. And in the very, very depths of the heart, we have our pure consciousness, our true self, which is directly connected with the source of our being. Now, most of the popular music appeals to the vital being within us. It is very easy to inwardly answer to that music because it is not a very evolved part of our being. And if you switch on the radio, usually you will listen to vital music, emotional music, often with a kind of aggressive note. Rock and roll, many jazz things. I love them very much. And the classical music, in fact, has parts which are coming from a much higher level. Beethoven once said something very interesting. He said, the classical music often is bigger than the musician who created it. And it is said that Bach used to pray before he composed. And a yogi once said that when Bach composed something, he went in a very high plane of consciousness, and he was like a channel, bringing it down. Of course, if it comes down through a channel, it will be a little bit influenced by the channel. But the music was very beautiful and pure. And even also Beethoven, he was able to bring, some yogis say, even higher planes down, but he influenced the music which came through him more than Bach. That is just a rumor which I heard, but which I found quite interesting. Did you ever consider that, by the way, Beethoven has never heard his 9th symphony? When I was young, I used to have goose skin. I was so excited listening to this symphony. I listened to it many, many, many times. And I knew when it was performed, the very first time it was in Vienna, then the members of the royal family were present. And it was usual that when the royal family entered the hall, then there was a lot of applause. But after this performance, the first performance of the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven, there was an unbelievable applause from the people. They have never heard something like that. It was a new consciousness in a way. And it was the first time in Austria that police had to interact because it was not allowed to have more applause for a musician than for the royalty. Funny thing. And the most funny and amazing thing, the great composer Beethoven did not realize it because he could not hear it. He has never heard his own composition, the Ninth Symphony, because he was completely deaf at that moment. Now, how could he compose that? They made studies. They took conductors who had an absolute hearing, who could sing each note exactly without, and then they made them. They did something so that they couldn't hear in this study, and then the task was to sing a song, a simple children's song. These accomplished musicians, professional musicians, were not able to sing the simplest song because they couldn't hear it. It is logical. So now the question arises, how could Beethoven then compose something like the Ninth Symphony? The answer can be found only in India or by mystics. He had opened one of his chakras and he had a supernatural capacities. Anyway, let us come back to the music. Now, the music of the heart, the music of the soul is considered to be music for meditation. And that is the music which is of interest here in this talk. And I want right away to say, although many people feel it is a very boring music if they are not used to meditation, and for this reason, I guess you can't hear it in the radio usually, I want to say that actually there is a lot of emotion. Emotion is nothing bad. Only if it is low or vital emotion, it can drop our consciousness. We want to elevate it because the higher we go, the happier we are, the more positive we look into the world, the more love we have, and the more we enjoy our life. So emotion is good, but it should be spiritual emotion. What is spiritual emotion? It is devotion. Devotion to a higher cause. Devotion to the supreme love, concern, compassion. And there are many categories of spiritual music. But if you take, for instance, the spirituals which were in America, or the bhajans or the kirtans in India, there is a lot of emotion. They sing with all their heart, and somebody sings the first phrase, and then all sing the same, and they cry. They cry for light, for illumination, for compassion, for love. A lot of emotion, and emotion elevates if it is a spiritual emotion. Of course, there is also very deep music, which is more the music of the soul. So that is extremely soothing, calm. It is very difficult to describe. It helps you to go beyond the mind and everything. In a certain way, you can say, even the mantras, everybody nowadays knows the meaning of a mantra, is a kind of an aspect, a small aspect of music, because it's a sound. And mantras can be even little songs. One of the most sacred mantras is the Gayatri mantra, which is a real song, a long sentence. And mantras have tremendous force. Why? You have to look at it in that way. There is a high consciousness. Let us say the consciousness of tremendous peace or love or like that. So a spiritual master of a high order will transpone this consciousness into a hearing, into a frequency which you can listen to. But still, this mantra, this listening, my English, forgive me, this wave of which you can listen to is identical with the consciousness where it came from. It is like a coin. One side is the peace, the other one is the mantra of peace. It's the same coin. So if you may not feel the peace, but you can start with the mantra, and like a thread, it leads you up to the source, which is, in this case, peace. So mantras are very effective and are the root, the basic spiritual sounds. And if you do it in a systematic way, like japa, I mean, you repeat a mantra many times, it is purifying like anything. You can consider it like that. You have a glass and there is ink inside. You want to get rid of this ink, but you can't move the glass. So you take drop by drop water, which falls into the glass, and slowly the ink will be diluted and disappears. And the same process in a way takes place if you take a mantra. The best thing is to take a general mantra. You know, Om is the source of all the mother mantra, or supreme you can use. A mantra that encompasses everything. So that can be most effective and will help you to stop your thought production line in your head. It is a film going on and on and on, and you want to stop it, but you can't. Of course, I have to say, silent meditation may be more effective if you are accomplished, if you are used to it. But many people will agree that it is very difficult to stop this film, this ongoing thought production in the brain. So here, spiritual music comes to help us, because then we are focused to the music, and it elevates us, like the silence. And it is much easier to be focused on something that is soothing, that is pleasing us, than silence. So it is, by the way, I also want to mention, spiritual music is not something which is which you can find only in India or in Asia. All cultures use it because it is so effective. The Sufis, they dance. The Christians, they have many, the Gregorianische choral, many spiritual songs. They have also mantras in the Christianity. The Rosary It is nothing else than a mantra. And of course, in India, there are many different kinds of spiritual musics, and also their spiritual path, which more or less use only music to make progress. That is their way of life, to sing from the morning to the evening. That would be, for myself personally, too much. I love it. But I love also silent meditation and other spiritual disciplines. But I want to say, if you want to realize God, even a mantra, even spiritual music would be enough if you follow that path consequently. Now, something different. Also some basics about music. What I want to say now is something about the number 7. 7 is a mystical number, at least for some countries. Now, in India, we have 7 major rivers, and rivers are considered to be something spiritual because they are always on the move, though they don't move, and they enter into the infinite ocean, into the source. And also they are water, so consciousness. 7 main rivers. Then there, how many days does a week have? It has 7. In German, we have the mystical poets, the Grimm brothers, and they have many stories which have a mystical background, and again, the number 7 comes. The high yogis say that there are 7 higher worlds and 7 lower worlds. It's quite interesting, or? And do you know how many colors the rainbow has? It has 7 colors. And I'm sure everybody knows nowadays that the main chakras that a human being has, again we come to 7, the number 7. And these are centers, spiritual centers in the subtle body. So you see, very interesting. And now, how many notes does the scale have, the musical scale? Again, 7. You will say 8, but the eighth note is again the same like the first. And by the way, each chakra corresponds to is related to a certain note, and even the earth, the moon, everything is related with a certain note. This is what the spiritual people say. For instance, the highest chakra, which is called the Sahasrara chakra, it corresponds with the note C, and the third eye with D flat, the heart with F. Now, something when I read that, and I read it in the book of a really very high master, that amazed me, that even the notes, the musical notes themselves have their own qualities. But it is clear in the visual scale, the frequencies have different colors. And so it does not amaze me, after all, that different frequencies in the audible scale have different qualities as well. For instance, F flat or B flat are considered to embody deep joy, bliss. And an octave higher, F flat would be typical for power. It's very powerful. Then if you want to be very soulful, this master said you should use the C flat and again F flat. And something, if you want a very delicate, subtle vibration, then A flat would be the proper note. So that is just some funny side. How do you say? Comments. By the way, there is a note which spiritual people occasionally don't like so much. Yes, that also exists. And it is said that G flat is a little bit avoided by spiritual musicians. Now, I said music embodies emotions, spiritual or also non-spiritual vibrations. Let us take the blues. I liked it very much long ago, and even much more the jazz music. Blues confers some sadness, but something in us corresponds to this vibration, and we like it. Or at least some people like it very much. And again, the happy music, exciting music, and all, and soothing music, calming music, all that can influence us. Now, how can you make an objective study to examine these effects? It's very difficult, but they made an interesting study. I feel it's quite interesting. They had flowers, and these flowers were grown and all the time exposed to the music of Bach. Classical, I think organ music it was. Very sweet music. Another group of flowers was exposed to very hard rock music. And they found out that the music which was exposed to Bach, here the flowers, they grow much better than the music of exposed to rock and roll. And here I have to say, if you take spiritual music, also use your inner being will grow much better than if you take aggressive music. Devotional music elevates our consciousness, and by this makes us very happy. Now, there are regular musicians. There are very great musicians. And there are genius musicians like Yehudi Menuhin, Pablo Casals, maybe even Miles Davis and others. There are regular composers, there are very accomplished composers, and there are a few genius composers like Amadeus Mozart, Beethoven, Bach, and others. But there is still a higher category, the mystic composers, the mystic musicians. This is a very, very small group. Why? Because it is necessary for them to be one with the source, to be completely illumined, to be one with God. And how many people have reached that goal? Not so many. One example for such an accomplished mystic composer is Hasrat Inayat Khan. Another one is Sri Chinmoy. So they are one with the universal self, with the Atma. And their music comes from the deepest inner source. And these master musicians, they know all the 7 lower and higher worlds. They know the Supreme. They know the world beyond this world. and they can transform the vibration of these other worlds into music. Of course, not all their musical compositions embody the highest experiences. Some they identify with seekers who may be desperate. I want to realize the highest, or who have many different experiences, and they express these experiences with the music. But in general, I have to say, and I am listening and performing this music every day, and I know so many different kinds of music. My whole life I spent with music, but the music of these mystic musicians is beyond anything you can get elsewhere. It is so rich, it is so beautiful, it is so elevating. It is often very simple, extremely simple. In fact, the highest musicians, concerning from the point of view of spirituality, they even don't want their musical compositions to be performed in harmonies. They prefer utter simplicity, because then the soul of the music can come much easier to the fore. Often these people were asked, how could you create something so beautiful? Or how could you create so many songs? Sri Chinmoy composed over 20,000 compositions. He performed with over 100 instruments. How is it possible? And here the answer is very significant, I feel. And this is every mystic musician would say the same. I am not the composer. I am not the musician. I am only the channel. I become an instrument. Before they start to compose, to perform, they enter within their innermost consciousness. They dive into the inner ocean, and they say, use me to the source. To make it more clear, I wish to tell you an interesting incident about the Master Sri Chinmoy. Once he uses to perform on piano, but he had never a piano teacher. And for this reason, he performs in a very peculiar way. He may use his elbow, his fists. Before he starts playing, he enters into his highest trance. And then the supreme, you say, it is in the state of I and my Father are one, overtakes his limbs, his fingers, and plays through him while he is in God trance, fully drunk with God consciousness, intoxicated with infinity, immortality, eternity, all in his consciousness he performs. And once he was driven by a disciple of his, and this disciple told me that he played a piano performance. And Sri Chinmoy listened to the performance and he was thunderstruck. Wow, what kind of music! How I wished to be able to play this heavenly music. Who is it? Who performed that music? It comes from another world. And his disciple said, but Master, it is you. But at that time when he performed, he was not performing. He was just an instrument. It was not a conscious thing. So that is the way a mystic musician performs. And you can imagine how interesting it is to listen to such a music and what kind of effect it can play on your consciousness. Now, to come back to the basics, in spirituality, in meditation, we try to make our mind calm, silence. All these little waves on the surface of our consciousness water, we want to calm down. And when it is very silent, and if we are pure, then we can see down to the ground. So that is difficult, but music comes to our rescue. And for this reason, music helps us a lot. Now, in the spiritual life, it is very important that you have the right attitude. If you are repeating a mantra, for instance, like a parrot, you can spend hours and hours, but the effect will be very little. Again, if you can repeat a mantra with all your heart, with tremendous intensity, then 3 times you say, Supreme. It will change the whole consciousness. So intensity is of paramount importance, and not the time you spend in your sadhana, in your spiritual discipline. And here, it is not like a clerk who, if he works 8 hours, he gets his salary. Here, the inner witness checks if you are how lovingly, how devotedly, how soulfully you are spending your time. And then you don't need to spend hours. It is the intensity. Now again, if you are trying to silence your mind, and that is the main task during meditation, it may become a little boring, it may become difficult. We have thoughts. Okay, we know we have to get rid of that thought, and like a boomerang, we are throwing them away. No, I don't want it. But what happens? The boomerang returns to us. Everybody knows this story. So here again, I did mention it already. Spiritual music comes to our aid. Then we get our mind clear of thoughts. And again, if the music, if the words are inspiring us, have an emotional impact, of course in devotional emotion, then it can be very intense. I have to say, I think I would never cry during a silent meditation, but during an intense devotional performance or singing, it can easily happen that tears come up. And these tears of devotional musicians, they purify your consciousness more easily than many hours of silent meditation, and have a strong effect. It is like going up with a rocket. So you see, music for meditation can be very effective. Some spiritual masters say, first comes silence, silent meditation. Next to it is already meditation with music. And there are masters who say, no, meditation music is as effective as silent music. One thing I want also to mention, that everybody has a soul, and even songs have souls. Now, one person has a special connection, has a special inner quality, so he responds to special songs, and another person to other songs. I have certain songs which I listen to since many years. I don't get tired of it. I have a whole CD it is an Indian musical CD. I listen to it every week since many, many years. And every time I get such intense emotions. So when you sing soulfully a song, the soul of the song comes to the fore, and it is kind of feeding your inner being. And just as an example, I want to say, there's one song that has obviously a direct connection with one member of my group. I mean, the soul of the song. And every time we performed this song, he would have tears in the eyes. It was unbelievable. Not only one or two times, every time. And which is even more interesting, even during our rehearsals, nobody was listening. I would look to him, tears. So this is the soul of a song. This is the power of devotional songs. And funny incident in one of our concerts, there were two small, like children, maybe 15 years old, quite young. And one child, she started to cry. Tears were coming down. And the other one saw it and started to laugh. And then also the one who cried started to laugh because they didn't understand. It was ridiculous for them. It was strange. But for me, it was not strange at all, because for the first time, she was connected with a deep inner sensation, with her soul came to the fore. So that is something that is very special to the spiritual music. But don't worry that everybody will start crying if they perform spiritual music. Once we had a performance in Germany, a concert, and we used to have a song. At the end, one very accomplished musician would have improvisation, and he was very good, but he was courageous. Is this the right word? He always dared to play something new, and we never knew would it come out perfectly. Then it would be wonderful, or sometimes he entered into the wrong path, and it ended up as a disaster. And the improvisation was the end of the song. So if it ended in the disaster, everything was ruined. And at this concert in Nuremberg, there was every auditorium is different. In Hungary, it is unbelievable, emotional, very enthusiastic. They are easily pleased. They were very strong feelings they can convey. Slovakia, they are very inwardly. They have maybe the same feelings, but they don't show. And in Germany, at that time in Nuremberg, it was like a wall. I don't want to say that their mind was in the front, but we could not get back the feelings that we tried to convey. There was no interaction at that concert. It was like a wall. Now, my friend had this improvisation and it went completely wrong. And here, we were in tears, but it was not tears of emotion, of devotion, but I looked already, right when he began his improvisation, we would look to each other. Will it function this time? It didn't function, so we smiled. We started laughing. And finally, we were roaring for laughing. There was such an intensity on the stage. All the musicians finally were laughing like anything. And the auditorium also, they joined us. it took quite a few minutes, and one woman from the auditorium was kind enough to come to the stage and give me a handkerchief to put away my tears, which my laughing had produced. After that incident, we had such a nice communication with the auditorium. We became one group, and they loved us much more. And they stayed after the concert for almost 2 hours, many people. So you see, there are not always tears of devotion, there are also funny moments. Another incident is nothing special, but just to give you an impression about spiritual music. We were recording one of our CDs, and it was late. We had very little time, and I was looking for one musician. He was just tuning his tambura. Tambura is an instrument that has, I think, 4 strings. You don't change the notes. It's always the same. Da 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 da, always like that. And I was looking for him. Where is he? We have no time. And he was in a dark room, just playing his notes. And these notes, always the same notes. It becomes a kind of this pattern of like an image, which is changing a little with many overnotes. It is very soothing, very special. So I listened to it. He didn't realize that I have entered the room. So then I was captured by this meditative atmosphere, and I sat down. And then another member of the group came, finally the whole group was sitting behind this boy. He didn't know that we were there. He was fully into that meditative atmosphere that the tambura created, which he played. And we were in rapture. So that is spiritual feelings without low vital excitement. Okay, I want to give a few suggestions how you could meditate with music. First of all, you have to choose some really spiritual music, devotional music. If you enter into YouTube, Sri Chinmoy, music for meditation, definitely you will find many beautiful examples of music which comes from a very high level of consciousness. Again, if you want to listen to a little lower level, which may still please you, you can listen to one of our 9 CDs on this channel. And the 10th CD will be out very soon. So you sit on a chair or on the ground, you keep your back straight, you close your eyes half, maybe you look to a candle, and you try to completely relax and enter into a state where you don't want anything. Meditation means to enter into the now. The future does not exist. That is a mere myth. People live for the future, they work for the future, they do everything for their future. But it doesn't exist. Everything in the future will take place in this very eternal moment, and nothing else does exist. And to stay in this moment, in the eternal now, that is meditation, and that you should do. And it will be very easy if you enter into your heart, because here is yourself. You say, I. You don't say I. You say, I. Here you enter. You enter into the very moment and you open to this music. You can feel a smile in your heart. And don't worry if any thoughts visit you, but you send them away. You're not attached to anything. All the impressions of the days which may visit you, you say hello, now bye-bye. At the moment, I don't need you, because now I am only. And again, you try to breathe very slowly. The rest, the music will do. That is the good thing with spiritual music. So you don't have to do anything special. Don't assess your thoughts. Don't try to feel something special. Only let everything go. Now, a few, how should I say, tricks. One thing is, which will help you intensify your music meditation and also your regular meditation, to feel your heartbeat. And if you can't feel it, then you can imagine it. It will intensify everything. It is also good, before you start with the music meditation, to enter for some moments into absolute silence and feel this silence, which is actually the source of spiritual music. And then a spiritual master gave the hint that it would help you very much if you can imagine an eye in your heart and it is full of aspiration tears. So these are just tricks. Anyway, what I really want to suggest is, whichever way you meditate, try it for a while. Do it for a week, every day 10 minutes, maybe 15. And then you will see some change to the better. Spiritual music is here to elevate your consciousness, to transform you to the better. What does it mean? You will not know why, but you will feel more love for yourself. Yes, you love yourself. That is nothing bad. And only then, if you love life and yourself, you are able also to offer love to the world. And it will be not only love to something, like in the regular life. They have an object and they want to possess it in a way. No, it will be a state of consciousness. Wherever you, after an intense music meditation, wherever your eye falls, your sight falls, it will be with love. That is an unbelievable reward which you will get from music for meditation. At the end, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for your patience, because I know how poor my English is. And if you could stay until the end, I'm very, very grateful to you. And I want to finish this little talk with a little piece of spiritual music which a very close friend of mine has sung, and which, in a way, I think this song, the soul of this song, has a very deep connection with my own song. So in a way, I love it very much. Thank you and bye-bye. Japanese
Basta Amai Ra